As I said in our opening, we are in the period of the Jewish tradition known as the High Holy Days. And on the Jewish calendar, the year 5781 began a week ago Friday on what is known as Rosh Hashanah. It lasts for 10 days, culminating in the observance of Yom Kippur, which is also known as the Day of Atonement. Yom Kippur is considered the holiest day on the Jewish calendar. It is the day where people seek to be in harmony with God by starting with a clean slate. Traditionally, this is a time for reflection, soul-searching, and especially making peace with others over any wrongs that you have committed in the past year. Basically, it is a time to take ownership of your sins and to make amends for them. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we are generally not big on the notions of sin, confession, and absolution. At the same time, we can acknowledge that there are moments when we fall short, when we miss the mark, when we fail. This is something that all human beings have in common. And yet on some level, I think on some occasions, certainly not all occasions, that we would like to believe that we are less flawed than our neighbors. We know we're not, of course, but who likes to own up to their mistakes or to make amends? Sometimes that's even harder. It is uncomfortable. It leaves us feeling vulnerable and sometimes scared because the truth of the matter is, you may be ready to make amends, but the person you need to make amends to may not be ready to hear what you have to say. It opens us up to possible criticism and judgment from those we have wronged. Many times we choose not to act at all as a way of putting off dealing with our flaws and wrongdoing. But we can't escape from ourselves. So how do we deal with this? How do we embrace our imperfections, and why would we want to do that in the first place? And to help answer this question while honoring the spirit of the High Holy Days, I'm going to make some references to the Jewish scriptures. Now, you may or may not be thinking I am not familiar with the writings of the Jewish faith, but those books, which Jews refer to as the Torah and the Tanakh, are the same ones that make up the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. The books are laid out a little differently. If you're really curious, we have a copy in the church office, and you can see how they laid them out. Same books, but in different order. But if you're familiar with those stories, you know more about the Jewish scriptures than you may think. Because the Old Testament is filled with deeds of men and women who are considered heroes among the Jewish people. At the same time, they were also flawed people because they were human beings. For example, Noah and his family were considered the only people worth saving when God decided to flood the world. Noah, of course, built an ark and preserved the animals. Noah also seemed to have a bit of a drinking problem. I suppose what else are you going to do when you're cooped up in an ark for 40 days and 40 nights? Abraham was the father of the Jewish nation. And despite their advanced ages, God told him and his wife Sarah that they would have descendants, and not only have descendants, but their descendants would be so great that their numbers would be larger than the stars themselves. Yet, despite the fact that God personally told them and told Abraham that he would give them children of their own, Abraham and Sarah were so faithful that they concocted the idea of Abraham fathering a child with one of Sarah's slaves. And on a side note, that's actually where the split between the Jewish and Islamic faith comes from. The Islamic faith starts the lineage with that first child born from Abraham's slave. The Jewish lineage starts with the first one that God gave to them. But that's a discussion for another time. Abraham's grandson, Jacob, was a twin. Of course, birthright was passed down to the firstborn, and he was born just a few minutes after his twin brother Esau. Nonetheless, Jacob stole that birthright of his older brother by tricking his blind father Isaac into thinking he was in fact the older brother. He got some sheep or goat skin because Esau had hairy arms apparently, and he wrapped it around, and when it was time to give the birthright over, his father, who couldn't see very well, felt the fur and assumed it was Esau. Moses led the Jewish people out of captivity in Egypt. He brought them the 10 Commandments. He led them to the promised land. However, Moses also had something of a temper, to the point where he once killed a man. The scriptures also suggest that Moses had some sort of speech impediment, most likely a stutter. And after over 40 years of faithful servitude to God, he was denied entrance into the promised land because he performed a miracle in a way other than how God had told him to, and then implied that he, Moses, not God, was the one who had performed that miracle. And those of you who went to Sunday school may remember there's actually 2 copies of the commandments. When Moses came down with the first set, while he had been up on the mountain, the Israelites had made a golden calf to worship, and Moses tossed the stones in anger and broke them, so he had to go get another copy. Samson, mighty champion with superhuman strength, the scriptures tell us, lost it because he had an eye for the ladies and was seduced by a Philistine woman, Delilah, who got him drunk, and while he slept, cut off all of his hair, which was said to have been the source of his strength. David was a warrior and a poet. The book of Psalms is attributed to him. He became king of the Jewish people and established the city of Jerusalem as their home. At the same time, David had an affair with a married woman. They had a child out of wedlock, and David ended up deliberately sending the woman's husband into battle, where he was killed just to get him out of the way. Esther ended up saving her people from the Persians by becoming queen. However, in order to do that, she had to lie about the fact that she was Jewish, violate many Jewish laws, and essentially, what we would say, sleep her way to the top of the halls of power. Then good old Jonah was told by God to go and be his prophet to the people of Nineveh. Jonah hated the Ninevites. So he epically chickened out, deliberately headed in the opposite direction, and tried to make a run for it by sailing out to sea, spending 3 days in the belly of a whale as a result. All of these people, these heroes to the Jewish people, have something in common. They are flawed. They make mistakes. They are imperfect. And yet God does not forsake them. God works with them to accomplish great things in spite of their imperfections. God knows that they are not perfect and that they never will be. One of the beautiful ideas behind Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is the notion that we need to make time to reflect, review, and rethink who we are and what we have achieved in our lives. We should never be 100% satisfied with who we are. Yes, we are imperfect, and we will never be perfect. But that should never keep us from heading in that direction. In order to grow as people, whether we're in our 20s or our 90s, there should always be a gap between who we are and who we could be, between reality and our hopes. If our aspirations for ourselves are ever completely fulfilled, there must be something wrong with those aspirations, because there is always room for improvement. The Hebrew word for this idea is teshuvah, and its challenge for us is to practice a process of self-criticism and self-reflection. To embrace teshuvah is the ultimate goal of our humanity, because the highest level that human beings can achieve is not one of fulfilling all of our goals, but rather to maintain a tension in which our goals serve as a foundation to look at the lives we have created and to challenge us to move forward and beyond. And we see this notion of teshuvah time and again in those Old Testament heroes. All of them are imperfect. We never see a hero in the Jewish scriptures who has it all together. Sometimes it's downright embarrassing. The biblical heroes, if anything, seem too human. They are loaded with imperfections. The point of their stories is that being a hero doesn't mean that one has no imperfections. It means that one must do something about them. No, we can never be perfect. But we should also never be complacent about being imperfect either. Again, there should always be this tension between the imperfect person that I am and the perfect person that I never can truly be. I can never reach that destination, but it shouldn't stop me from heading in that direction. It's kind of like that old saying, life is about the journey, not the destination. By reading the stories of the Old Testament heroes, we are challenged to emulate them. And we can sympathize with them because, like them, we are imperfect. We are going to fail like Moses or Abraham. We are going to screw up like King David. There are going to be many aspects of our lives, whether it's in our relationships with our partners or our children, our friends, our co-workers, or with people in society in general, when we're not going to be who we ought to be or who we could be, and we are living that out in real time, day to day, in 2020. That is part and parcel of the human condition. The idea, the beautiful idea behind Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is the understanding that to be fully human is to not passively accept our failings. To be fully human is to aspire to overcome them, to always be open to self-reflection and to self-improvement. And so, I challenge you today, and in the days ahead, and in the weeks ahead, to acknowledge, perhaps even embrace your imperfections, but to never grow complacent with them. Use them as a foundation. May it be so.